The best of money matters. Wealth Tracker.
Welcome to the Wealth Tracker, where we dive into the uncharted territories of niche investment strategies that promise to redefine wealth. Hello, I'm Hongbin Jeong. Now, Visa released a comprehensive report highlighting a notable shift in the travel habits of Singaporeans, revealing that they are not only traveling more, but also spending smarter. Now, according to the latest data, travel spending during key periods like the year-end and Lunar New Year has hit new highs, with an increasing focus on experiences over traditional shopping. Now, this marks a significant change in consumer behavior as Singaporeans prioritize dining, entertainment, and wellness during their trips. And at the same time, digital payments are playing a pivotal role in making travel more seamless and efficient. So to dive deeper into these trends and explore how Singaporeans are evolving in their travel spending and planning, joining us today is Adeline Kim, who's the country manager for Singapore and Brunei at Visa. Hi, Adeline. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Hongbin. Thanks for having me.
Adeline, Visa's data shows that Singaporeans are spending more on travel, particularly during the year-end and Lunar New Year periods. What do you think is driving this increase? Are Singaporeans becoming more willing to invest in travel, or is it more about strategic spending?
Yeah, if you look at our data, I'm going to be referencing a combination of research and our spend data. And actually, based on our research, the average Singaporean took 4.6 trips last year, and that's up from the 4.4 trips that we saw the year before. Well, really, travel is a passion point for a lot of Singaporeans, other than food, of course. And based on the same research, we've found that actually almost 9 out of 10 Singaporeans said that they will travel for leisure over the next 1 year. Other than, of course, a bit of the still residual pent-up demand coming from post-COVID, I think there are really several reasons why travel is still so strong. One of the key reasons, of course, is the fact that we've got still a very strong Sing dollars, and that's made really overseas trips more affordable. It's showing up in some of the spend data that we're seeing with, like you mentioned, dining and shopping as the top spend categories, and also the top travel corridors are showing actually the strength of the Sing dollars versus some of these currencies.
I see. Well, interestingly, shopping and dining now account for 61% of total travel spend. Does this suggest a shift in spending priorities towards lifestyle experiences over traditional retail purchases? And from a financial standpoint, how do you see this influencing budgeting decisions for travelers?
Shopping and dining have always been quite popular categories for Singaporeans, so it's not surprising that it forms about 61% of total travel spend. Maybe I'll share some highlights into some of the areas of spend that we've seen grown quite strongly. I think in recent couple of years, we've seen strong growth in expenditure on experiences by Singapore cardholders, such as entertainment spend, especially on theatre productions, musicals, concerts, and that's grown really quite a fair bit year on year compared to pre-pandemic. Other than that, and shopping and dining, Singaporeans are also spending on international attractions. I think in part, largely also because there are now quite a fair bit of new attractions coming up in the region. And, with family travel, attractions is always top priority. The other interesting insight, actually, you asked about budgeting and whether, from a financial standpoint, that's an influence budgeting decisions. One of our research actually showed that last year, 44% of the respondents said that they will adjust their itinerary based on cost. And that's up from 39% the previous year. So I think the combination of cost of travel overseas and the strength of the Sing dollars is definitely impacting how Singaporeans may choose certain destinations to go to and how they budget their travel in terms of length of travel and what they do when they're in that destination.
Well, we've also seen a 16% year-on-year rise in online lodging bookings and a 15% increase in spending on alternative airlines. Do you think Singaporeans are getting savvier with their travel spending, seeking better deals, prioritizing flexibility, or even viewing travel as an investment in experiences rather than just an expense?
Yeah, definitely. I think let's delve a bit into e-com spend, right, online, because I think the surge of e-commerce spend in both online shopping and online travel has definitely changed the way Singaporeans are planning their spend. I'll give two specific examples. I think these days it's a lot easier to buy retail goods from international brands, either on, marketplaces in Singapore, like, Korean masks, or, overseas and getting it shipped to Singapore. I think that trend has influenced how Singaporeans spend overseas. It's no longer just about, buying those items that you may not have been able to buy in Singapore, because those are more readily available, and hence that shifted or freed up some budget to spend on other things. So that's the first trend. The second trend, of course, is you kind of alluded to that with online travel and online hotel bookings being more common. It also provides greater transparency around pricing. It's so easy to compare the cost of, a particular hotel that I want to stay in Seoul, for example, across different booking platforms. And I think that has definitely contributed to the savviness of Singaporeans. You also mentioned about budget airlines. I think, again, if we think about airline capacity, generally speaking, that has definitely increased from a year-on-year basis. From some of the numbers I've seen, we're now at about 90% airline capacity compared to pre-pandemic. And it's forecasted that by 2026, Singapore outbound airline capacity will recover to pre-pandemic levels. So that definitely comes from a combination of traditional airlines resuming their full capacity, but also new airlines, especially budget airlines, coming into Singapore. And that definitely has helped reduce the cost of travel and made the whole concept of impulse travel maybe more common and more acceptable.
Well, medical tourism is also on the rise with healthcare-related spending in South Korea jumping by 58%. What's driving this trend? And do you see Singaporeans increasingly setting aside budgets for medical and wellness travel? Could this become a long-term investment category?
Yeah, I think the concept of combining travel with another objective is not new. You might have heard about this term called bleisure, business with leisure. And that really means if you're going overseas for a business trip, you might take the opportunity to extend 1 or 2 days to, go on a leisure travel. Medical tourism is another concept that's not new. I think in the past, it was probably more common as an inbound trend. And you will hear, for example, Indonesians or Thais, for example, coming to Singapore for medical tourism. I think as Singaporeans become more savvy, and there's a general awareness, especially driven by content that could be seen on social media platforms, by, the whole K-wave, medical tourism has become really popular. And we're seeing the growth in healthcare-related spend in travel destinations. For example, to your point about into Korea, other than South Korea, actually Thailand is also fast emerging as a healthcare-driven travel destination.
Okay.
And we're seeing an increasing number of Singaporeans seeking medical services abroad. For example, for Thailand, the spend that we've seen on a year-on-year basis on medical-related services is well over 59%.
Okay, well, Japan has also experienced a remarkable 138% increase in travel spend compared to pre-pandemic levels. What makes Japan such an attractive destination for Singaporean travelers right now? Is it the strength of the Sing dollar that's making it attractive?
Yeah, who doesn't like Japan, I guess, is the question. Japan certainly has always been strong. Interestingly, when we saw Japan consistently being ranked the top 3 outbound destinations for Singapore, I asked my team to take a look at whether there's a correlation to the weaker yen. And actually, if we track back to the past 5 years, even when yen was a lot stronger, Japan was still in the top 5 destination for Singapore. Whether it's your food, your culture, your unique experiences, Japan continues to be really attractive. So maybe just double-clicking on where in Japan and why people are traveling to Japan. I think peak periods like the ski season and the cherry blossom season are definitely top travel seasons for Singaporeans. If we look at the data from Japan National Tourism Organization, they shared that a record-breaking 691,000 Singaporeans visited Japan last year. Our data showed that there was a 36% growth in cross-border spend during the ski season, which is around about December last year to early this year. Certainly, I think the strong currency helps. But other than the strong currency, I think Japan as a destination is just a lot easier for people to travel. And the concept of repeat traveling to Japan has also become a lot more common.
I see. Well, but in the end, Malaysia remains a top destination with a 75% rise in food and grocery spending there. What makes Malaysia such a unique financial proposition for Singaporeans? Is it more about cost effectiveness, convenience, or even currency strength?
Probably all of the above. Singapore consistently ranks as Malaysia's primary source market for international visitors. We are linked by road, so we are literally neighbors. You could take a bus over to JB quite quickly. Again, looking at data, from January to October last year, there were 7.6 million Singaporean visitors entering Malaysia. And that far surpasses the second biggest market for Malaysia, which is Indonesia, at 3.1 million arrivals during the same time frame. If we look at the visa data, about 42% of the spend in Malaysia is directly correlated to spend in Johor Bahru, in JB. So I mentioned, the ease of traveling to Malaysia, to JB, that's definitely one. I think the currency strength and the familiarity in terms of food, language, definitely means that Malaysia will probably continue to stay as our top destination for a long time to come.
Okay, and it looks like China has also seen an 86% rise in travel spend driven by visa-free travel. How big of a financial factor are relaxed entry requirements in driving travel demand? Could this be a game changer for regional tourism spending?
We're really lucky in Singapore because the Singapore passport is ranked one of the best in the world, given how many countries we are exempt from visa. Of course, you might remember that for Singaporeans traveling to China, earlier on, we needed a visa. And I think once the visa requirements was relaxed, we saw a surge in spend and travel. This coupled with the recovery of airline capacity, which is now, the airline capacity from Singapore to China is now actually higher than 2019. And I think that definitely has contributed to a surge of travel to China. Anecdotally, I'm seeing there's always this perception that China is maybe for some of the older folks, from our parents when they go back to their hometown to visit their relatives. But anecdotally, at least I'm seeing on my social media platform that a lot of my younger friends are going to China in some of the cities, not just for, sightseeing, but also some of the food and shopping experiences that Singaporeans are so familiar with.
But beyond the usual hotspots like Japan, Malaysia, and China, are there any emerging destinations where Singaporeans are starting to invest their travel dollars in 2025?
I think other than, of course, the regional destinations that we continue to see strong demand in, travel to UK, US, Australia, Europe actually largely continues to be strong. Maybe less frequent, but certainly in terms of spend quantum, and that's what Visa see in our data, is still holding up really strong. The other emerging trend we're seeing is actually maybe not necessarily a destination per se, but a few destinations come to mind when you talk about sustainable tourism, something that seems to be emerging as a trend, not coming out very strongly yet in data or in research. But I think in our last consumer research, we're seeing mention of eco-friendly accommodation that Singaporeans are looking at, and also sustainable travel. We mentioned earlier about weekend travel. My hypothesis is that with Singaporeans getting more familiar with some of these popular destinations like Seoul, like Tokyo, and with the advent of budget airlines coming through that offers weekend trips, I think the concept of doing a weekend trip, maybe beyond 3-4 hours, may get more and more popular as Singaporeans kind of plan their holidays around long weekends and public holidays in the year.
It's like taking a short break without taking leave from work,
Yeah.
Well, given
Definitely.
that travel spending is on the rise here, Adeline, how should Singaporeans manage their finances when planning for big ticket vacations then? Are there any financial tools or strategies that Visa is doing to ensure a smooth travel for Singaporeans?
Yeah, maybe I'll answer this question in two parts. I think the first part is how in Visa we look at trying to make sure that the entire travel experience for a Visa card holder is well taken care of. We break it down into kind of pre-trip and, of course, in-destination. And a lot of the emphasis we're doing on the pre-trip front is working with travel partners to make sure that there are good offers, travel-related offers, whether it's accommodation offers, whether it's airline offers, to cater to savvy consumers who are always out there looking for good discounts and good deals. If you look at certain segments, like the affluent segments, we also have the Visa Concierge service that our affluent customers and card members can access to. And this is really a digital personal assistant where you can ask to make dining reservations at the next Michelin restaurant, or in countries like Japan where language may be a challenge.
Right.
So that's kind of the first part we look at. In terms of financial tools you mentioned and you asked, we're seeing actually a trend. Well, we continue to work with banks to make sure that the Visa card that you use for your travel when you're overseas offers you one of the best value proposition. Whether you're a miles junkie, whether you are a cashback junkie, there is a Visa card out there that you would use for your big ticket purchases that allows you to actually either use a credit card or in some instances actually multi-currency prepaid cards or debit cards is another trend that we're seeing that really is getting more and more popular. And that helps Singaporeans kind of plan for their travel because they can now then leverage the strong Sing dollars and actually save on some of the FX charges that might come along with some other products. And using these multi-currency products actually allow them to tap on that benefit.
I mean, we all want to travel, stress-free without breaking the bank, right, Adeline?
That's true. Actually, you bring to mind another experience that we're looking at, which is contactless. I think in Singapore, we're very used to tapping our card in most places here, but in some other countries, contactless is still being built up, and we want to make sure that the same seamless experience that you get in Singapore, you get it overseas as well. So we continue to drive contactless spend and contactless payments in most of the source markets that a Singaporean can go to.
Right. I mean, we're so used to saying pay now or PayWave, and then they don't understand what we're saying. Well, anyways, Adeline, before we let you go here, looking ahead to 2025 and beyond, what emerging trends do you expect to influence Singaporeans' travel behaviors, and how are you preparing for these changes at Visa?
Yeah, I think we can't talk about travel and technology without talking about AI. Already, anecdotally, I'm sure we're hearing friends or ourselves are using, AI tools to plan for our travel itinerary. So I think how AI is going to impact how we plan for our travel, how we eventually make our bookings, and maybe even some of our experiences overseas, whether it's autonomous cars. For example, I was in SF a couple of months ago, and I sat in a driverless car, and that wasn't a trial, right? It was an actual working car. I think technology and how it's going to influence the way we plan for our travel is definitely one big trend that we're seeing impact in the industry. The other thing that I mentioned earlier is the whole concept of multi-currency and FX and how that will continue, I think, to change the consumer behavior. I pray and hope that someday no one has to go to a money changer to change for foreign currency, incur parking, waste, the half an hour to change money, because there is a Visa card out there that allows you to actually spend on the local currency or even earn miles on Sing dollars when you spend on that card.
Well, looking forward to all those changes, and I'm ready for my next vacation. Well, thank you so much, Adeline, for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was Adeline Kim, who is the country manager for Singapore and Brunei at Visa. This has been the Wealth Tracker with me, Hongbin Jeong.
Before acting on the information on Money FM, please consider if it's suitable for your own investment objectives, financial situation, and risk tolerance. To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.